Hello and welcome. I'm Lee Peterson, the host of the podcast WDcast, which is called WDcast because it's brought to you by WD Partners, whose tag is Innovation at Scale, which means WD has services that range from strategy, design, digital and operations to architecture and construction management, end-to-end services, in other words. They are at WDpartners.com. Thanks, WD. Thanks, Chris. A second about the show and the mission of the show. On WDcast, we want to talk about the burning business platforms of the 21st century and the many challenges involved. Not so concerned about what the business is. I mean, we don't stick to like a retail format, for instance, and that we're going to address, and as long as it's on fire. So right now, that's kind of a lot of stuff, I think. Today, we're going to talk about something near and dear to my heart, consumers and their modern behavior, which is much different than the behavior was like 5 years ago. I have with me, live and in person, someone who has spent years on this topic and is considered a global expert. And I can tell that by all the speaking ups that she's had, as we have previously discussed. Marcie Merriman. Marcie is the practice leader, cultural insights and customer strategy at EY, or Ernst & Young, whose tagline is building a better world. So go EY and go Marcie. And full disclosure, someone I've admired for at least a decade or two. I think it's a decade and a half or something like that. But good to have you here. And Marcie, thank you very much for joining us. How are you today?
Great. Glad to be here.
Awesome. A disclaimer. The thoughts and opinions expressed today belong to the members of this discussion and do not necessarily represent those of the companies that they work for, which is EY and WD Partners. Okay, Marcie, your background is in a lot of ways similar to mine. We're retailers sort of at heart. We came from kind of the consumer side of that. So I feel your pain and your joy, but could you indulge us a little bit and tell us about the road that you've been on, that you've chosen? Like, how did you get here?
Great question. A lot of it was kind of serendipity, I think. Through different phases of my career, I had opportunities come along that always led to something different, or I knew it was time to make a change. So started with Toys R Us right out of college. The reason I went with them, I actually was offered an internship with one of the Wall Street investment banks. And I kind of thought that it was boring. It didn't seem very interesting to me. And I loved when I met the retail guys at Toys R Us and what the opportunities were, the expansion internationally. But then looking at opportunities beyond that, I joined EY, Ernst & Young, for the first time back in '95. Spent time 5-6 years there running consumer strategy practice. Joined L Brands with Victoria's Secret and brand strategy there. And then on to design from there. So joined a design firm similar to WD Partners. Spent 9 years there and then had my own company, which was acquired by EY.
So Toys R Us, New Jersey?
That's where the corporate was. Yeah. So I ran stores out of both Boston and Detroit.
Okay. And you're from?
I grew up in Michigan.
There's too many gaps in there, but we're going to let you slide.
That would take us more than an hour.
That's right, yeah. Michigan, Boston, yeah. And also, you're a mom, right?
Yep, I sure am. Got a 16-year-old, so I have a Gen Z. So she gets a lot of firsthand analysis in our home, but she also sets me straight when she doesn't think I'm quite right.
And she hates the idea of climate change, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's interesting when you see, like I saw with, her and others, like 2 years ago, around the straw issue. And, they, a couple of years ago, were treating straws the same way, Gen X boomers. Remember the commercial back when we were kids? And they had the commercial with don't throw the cup out, don't litter, don't be a litter bug. Yeah. The commercial on TV. I mean, think about today, the idea of having to tell people don't throw your fast food cup out the window. And to them, the idea around straws and recycling, that's as second nature as, to us would have been, don't throw your cup out the window.
Like a duh.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you doing? Yeah. I went through the same thing. I've got a couple of Gen Zers too, and it seemed kind of sudden. They came in and they said, "What are you doing with these straws?
Yep.
Let's go out and we're going to buy some permanent straws and da 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 da." And we were for it. I was like, okay, and I think I realized then that they were onto something that we probably should have been on a long time ago.
Well, it just shows how fast information spreads nowadays. Like when a couple of people take hold of the idea of straws and what it's doing and looking at the ocean, and there's a couple companies that were responding to it. In this generation, when they take hold, it doesn't take time for attitudes, trends, whatever it is, to get around. It happens really fast.
Yeah, not even TV commercials. You can beat the TV commercials.
Oh yeah,
actually.
yeah.
As a matter of fact, I don't even think I've seen an anti-straw TV commercial, right?
No.
It never even happened.
It's not, and it's not the audience that those companies, when you think about their limited resources, so rather than running an ad on TV, they're going to reach people through social, and they know the young people are going to be the ones that push it.
Yeah, good point. And then EY, so the second stint with EY, right? And they're not exactly known for what you do specifically. So how'd you talk them into becoming more empathetic about today's consumers, like the people we were just talking about?
Well, I think, for me, it's always been natural, to look at the human element. So what does that person as a human being want first? What's going on in their life? And that's how I was trained in brand strategy and thinking about brand opportunities. You're looking for the gap, looking for the white space. You don't find the white space by looking at what is it today or what consumers are doing today in the store. You look at their broader life and what's missing from their world, what's missing when they're at home trying to get ready or get dressed, or they're out with their friends, or whatever it is. It's understanding those components that identify the new opportunities for products, for services, whatever it is. So I was trained early on, you look at the human being, you look at their life holistically. And that also helps me, I had the bonus of my undergraduate in sociology and anthropology, and being able to lean on that training as a way of understanding people, societies, changes within it, and what the impact are on people and what moves on. So when I joined EY, 6 years ago, EY acquired my company. I had a company I had founded just 2 years prior. They bought me and the company. But when I joined the firm, I think they knew this was important. They knew customer centricity was important and looking at these things, but they hadn't necessarily looked at it through an anthropological lens, which is what I'm bringing. And it wasn't a matter of convincing EY. It was a matter of talking with clients and the light bulbs coming out with clients. And when we see something resonate with clients, we know we've got something. So it wasn't a matter of convincing. It was a matter of demonstrating, and that picks up with everybody.
Interesting. So, we did a little bit, but talk to us about this new consumer. So what's going on? Because I think as the generations shift, from young to old, then all kinds of things happen. And people have babies, and they get jobs where they actually make money. They finally pay off their college loans. And as these giant shifts happen, a lot happens kind of on the inside of that. So did you talk about that a little bit? Like, who is this new customer?
Yeah. Well, what I'm doing is focusing on the youth, which is what I've always kind of done. And I'm sure you remember from Limited and fashion brands and everything else, we always understood the younger consumer, not necessarily as the target, but understanding where their tastes were as far as fashion, what they want, how they want to wear it, all those things. We looked at younger groups because we knew that's what everybody else would want, what everybody else would come to expect.
Aspirational.
Exactly. So what I've done is applied that same thinking. So whether it's fashion, music, new technology, social change, whatever it is, we can look at the youngest, somewhat developed demographic, which is going to be your 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. By understanding where they are mentally, what they want, we can anticipate what all the other consumers are going to want. So it's kind of separate from looking at like the life stage. So millennials, as they have kids, they're going to want different things. So those are things we look at from an immediacy, from what kinds of products and services are they going to be wanting and how do they want it. But where I look at Gen Z today, the 12 to 22-year-olds, is because of their expectation of how easy things should be, their expectation of what technology should be delivering. They use technology in every aspect of their life. It's just intuitively ingrained to the degree that, the rest of us, they're not even conscious they're using it like the rest of us, other generations are. Yeah. And if we can understand what they expect and design solutions and shopping experiences and how easy it should be and how it gets to them, on and on and on. If we can do those things and deliver against their high expectations, we'll hit everybody else. And I'm sure you've seen and I'm sure you experience this too. Like when something doesn't work, when you try to buy something online and you can't get through the checkout, or it's asking for the passcodes, or whatever it is. Most of people in Gen X, Boomers, maybe even some Millennials, the first inclination is our first inclination is, oh, what am I doing wrong? What did I put in wrong? What should I go through this? Should I go through that? Well, we all know as designers that you don't blame the user, you blame the design, right? It's the design that's not working. Gen Z gets this. So when they come against these problems, if something's not easy, they can't just do it, in a snap. They know something's wrong with the product, the service, the technology, and they just move on to something else. They're not wasting their time trying to figure it out. So if we go against their ease, we can deliver things the rest of us just don't know to expect yet.
I think the ease is a big factor, right? I think about shopping retail not that long ago, and it seems now like ridiculously hard. Mm-hmm. But then it didn't. Right. I mean, well, I got to get in my car. I got to go to a shopping center. I got to go get out of my car. I got to go walk around the shopping center. I got to walk to 50 stores. I got to try stuff on, and I bought nothing. Right. Or I didn't find what I want quite. And now it's just so easy to shop globally and all that. Mm-hmm. So do you think this transformation towards the younger consumer's mentality of making everything so easy is a good thing? Or do you think we're kind of in a period where the delta could be super painful?
What's the saying? The ship has left the station. The whatever has left the station. I don't know if it's better or not, but I don't think we can go back. And I think it's only going to get worse from the expectation, because right now, when we look at why things still seem difficult in different regards, and I think you and I are probably more sensitive to it because we know the possibilities, we know how much easier it should be, and what not just from technology but processes and everything else. I don't think we have the same threshold as others, but when we think about where things are going, and especially because of 5G and the connectivity and the instantaneous connection it's going to bring with it, it really is going to change everything. I mean, between 3G to 4G, 4G was only 10 times faster in connectivity over 3G. But with it, we got streaming videos. We can watch things on our, on our cell phone. We have GPS. We have changing communication. Just on and on and on.
Infinitely better. Yeah.
Right. That was not possible with 3G. I mean, maybe you could do it once in a while, and you got the buffer and everything else. That's how much it changed our world. E-commerce exploded with it because of the speed and ease. This what is it? Cyber Monday. The reason that was big was because people needed to be back in the office where they had high connectivity in order to do it. Yeah. It's no longer relevant. Yeah. 5G is going to be 100 times faster connectivity than what we saw with the 10G, or 10 times increase between 3 and 4. 100 times faster than 4G. I mean, consider that. So the things that are out there, the sensors, all these other capabilities, the capabilities are out there. But right now, the connectivity is not there, and the cost factor is too high. With 5G, these other things coming in, IoT, the real version of IoT, virtual reality, all these things are going to be possible. So it really is going to change our world in radical ways.
So that's a little frightening, I guess, to a degree. Do you think there's going to be a 6G?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's just
10G.
I mean, it'll just keep going. But what I wonder about is how can we close the gap between the releases of these things? I mean, if you have 4G, God, what's the great year? 2009, 2000, or 2009, 2010, I think is when 4G became live. So it's been relatively close to 10 years, between these. And it's still going to take time to get it ramped up. We know in China they're much farther along in it. Here they're starting to talk about and using in very specific use cases like stadiums and that sort of thing will come along first. But it seems they should be moving faster toward these, 6G, 7G, whatever. We'll see.
What do you think about, because I know you're in tune with this from your experience, but what do you think about where retail's at? So in other words, at least in my mind, just to kick it off, I mean, retail's having a hard time keeping up, as a correlation with 3G, really, and maybe 4G, and like, how do we do this and how do we do that? How do we spend the money to do it? Because basically the ROI model was built in 1981.
Right.
So do you think, what do you think of the state that they're in? What would you call that?
I think it's still a rough state. I think there's just so much more to it than just the retail aspect. And it's also, if you think about the products that retailers are selling, a lot of those aren't up to speed yet either. And from a consumer standpoint, consumer expectations around health and wellness, and it's still a relatively small part of the population that's actually eating a lot of the better quality stuff. Or there's an economic variable to it too. So I think all of these things are components of where retail is and what retail's able to do and what retail's able to sell. So it's been something, retailers I think move notoriously slow. And even before technology was, the holy grail that it is today, they were still not very quick to put in new technologies and focused on, the heart of the merchant and, these things as drivers. But the challenge is the world and what technology can provide. As far as sizing, I mean, think about these, companies that can give you the perfect fitting pair of jeans out of thousands without ever trying anything on or going. But based upon the algorithms and everything else, they can send them to you. And, I subscribe to all these different things because I feel like I have to, and I kind of like it. But in getting them, I'm always amazed. Like, I open the box, I'm like, I don't need any of this stuff. I don't need another pair of jeans, for God's sakes. But of course it's there and I got to try it on. And oh my God, they fit perfect. I mean, I remember going to department stores not that long ago, trying on 50 different pairs and walking out with nothing. So, this is the degree that consumer expectations have ramped up. But within retail, the ability to respond to it has gotten a lot slower. It's not stayed at the same pace.
Well, I think also, especially with young people, like we noticed in the studies that we do, which are extensive, but they're also fairly simple. We're looking for like one or two really big points. And one of the things we noticed almost every time in every study that we did is that people born before like 1995, somewhere around there, which is coincidentally when Amazon started, and the people who were born after that, before and after, had completely different mindsets about things.
Right.
Like you and I talked about Gen Z a little bit earlier, and the expectations there and the speed and the ease, and they know why it's not easy. And I think like for somebody like me, it's like, well, I must have screwed up.
Right.
So do you find that to be true too? Like there's such a thing as a digital native, like grow up with a smartphone in their hand?
Yeah, completely. I mean, there's been a few studies out lately around views of ease of technology and how it's changed our world. And one that I saw recently asked the four generations, boomers through Gen Z, if technology has made life easier. And Gen Z is the one to least likely to say it's made life easier, which is kind of ironic. You would think that they'd be like, oh, yeah, it's the best. But they don't
know the difference.
They don't distinguish. Yeah. So that's what's crazy when we talk about omni-channel, as if there's these different channels that you're buying stuff. In their world, it's all blurred. There's no longer a differentiation between it.
Well, I just read, I think 2 weeks ago, something about Gen Z buys 57% of their apparel through Instagram. So in other words, they're looking, they see somebody's photo on there. It could be an influencer, it could be anybody, it could be a rock star, it could be a friend.
Yeah.
And anything, press a couple buttons, they buy it through Instagram as like the first channel. So I think that's a complete like change of mindset to me.
Yeah.
Do you think that's kind of a bombshell, like Instagram is the place to buy stuff?
Yeah, what I think is the bigger bombshell is how fast those things change. So it's not that, buying it through social is going to maintain for the next 5 years. It might have a year, 18-month run before it's no longer the hot thing. So, I mean, I think that's where, again, the challenge is for
TikTok,
retailers.
whatever.
It's a notoriously tomorrow type-based business. So what's my inventory? How do I get rid of it before it goes down? On and on and on. But it's ironic that they're not looking at how they're reaching the consumer as much of a changing pace. So, they're thinking it will come back to, they'll come back to stores or, this or that. It might be, social buying today and, 2 years from now or a year from now, whatever it is, it's just that it shows up because it knows I need it.
So it's just of the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. So speaking of digital natives and social media, see this as a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, there's a lot of conversation now, and I think about it myself all the time. Like I had 2 daughters that I could not get off the phone. Mm-hmm. And when I went to take the phone away or something like that, you would think I had pulled a knife on them. And it was like anything but that. But then side note, I knew how to punish them, but do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing, social media?
I think it's mixed. I mean, you look at the positive side of it and how messages around sustainability or treatment of people around the world or whatever it is, that type of information can be shared very quickly. The downside, as you mentioned, was bullying and those things. What's really interesting is we just finished a study on Gen Z, 12 to 22 in the U.S., and you're talking about what their concerns are and what they're worried about. The things that they are worried about are financial matters. These are 12 to 22-year-olds. So looking even the 12, 13, 14-year-olds are worried about financial matters, how they can afford things. Are they going to be able to afford college, whatever it is? Bullying was way down on the list as something that was part of their, really top concerns. And I think part of that is because they've become so desensitized to it in a way. So, when it's personal, when it's somebody from your school or whatever that's doing it, but if you look at the broader basis, like after the Parkland, mass shootings and horrible, horrible, horrible things that happened there, when I saw the news, I remember the first thing I thought about was, okay, this is going to be different. When I saw the age of these students, I thought this is going to be different. They are going to treat this differently. And of course, which they did. But some of the people, talking with at that time said, well, what's going to happen when they start getting, the backlash and people, the NRA against them or, whatever it is. And I thought, they're used to it. They don't get, like, if you or I get, if we get one bad really comment to this podcast, we might be like, oh, man, they dissed us or whatever it is.
I'll call them.
Yeah, they get it. They're just so used to it. They just, they see it a troll, whatever, move on. It doesn't affect them the same way as it affects us.
I never really thought about that. So I'm really glad that you came here today, Marcie.
I'm glad to be here.
But it's really true. I mean, they're used to getting beat up from 500 different sources.
Yeah.
Random.
Yep.
Could be somebody you never met before.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. So it's not to say it doesn't hurt, but I think they have a different viewpoint toward us.
But you still think it's a mixed thing?
I think I do. Even in my own personal life, I think it's a mixed thing. I look at the positive and being able to keep up with people and this and that. And I'm like, I don't need to see all this.
Right.
And I don't need comments about different things. And it seems like everyone's got to, even look at different social outlets. It seems like, catty or whatever has become part of our social norm. Like you're supposed to do something, a snotty comment or, whatever it is. And that, I think, is a bad aspect of what's been adopted through social.
Yeah, haters rule.
Right.
Sort of.
Right.
And everybody piles on a hater. The hater makes a comment about somebody, which is, fortunate or unfortunate, I don't know, just sort of a fact of life. I think the disturbing thing for me is like the spread of misinformation and lies and stuff like that. And, the way that people have been able to form groups in one sense on social media is really good. Like I can find people that do exactly what I do and I can talk to them about it. But when it's something not so good and you've formed a group, suddenly you think there's so many of us out there. But when you have 320 million people just in this country alone, it's pretty easy to find 15,000 people that do some kind of crazy thing that you do too.
Yep. Yeah, it allows a lot of people to come out from under the couch.
Anyway, that's a little op-ed there for you. But sidebar on department stores. Mm-hmm. So this has always been a pet peeve of mine since I've been in specialty retail. I never really understood it. And I've always understood specialty, like, well, I'm going to that store for this, and then department stores, I'm going to the store for what? For everything? What do you think about department stores? Are they doomed?
I don't know.
Are you allowed to say?
Can't give names.
I did a disclaimer at the beginning of this.
I don't think department stores as a category are doomed because they're department stores. I think that there's still the potential to offer within them unique services, capabilities, whatever. It's a box. I mean, so it'd be the same thing as saying all boxes, all big boxes are doomed. Not necessarily the case if you can figure out how to deliver on unique needs in different ways. I think the biggest problem with department stores today is you can go in any one of 100 of them and you have no clue where you are. I mean, it could be any one of them. There's no difference. And it's the same thing with a lot of, a lot of different businesses.
Yeah, I think they have a kind of a long way to go. Mm-hmm. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I walk into the Macy's, let's say, on 34th Street. It looks great. I love the whole first floor, especially holiday. Oh my God, it's like a place that you have to go to and you want to go to. And now they've got Beta and some other things there that are, really interesting. But then I go to the ones here in Columbus, Ohio, and it's, just not the same thing. It's really difficult to scale the interesting things that you need to do now at retail to get people to come back and get off the couch and not just press a couple buttons and get the same damn thing.
Yeah, well, and it's the challenge of getting in them, getting people over the threshold has never been more difficult because they don't need to. I mean, in the past, you went to department stores because there's stuff and you just kind of need it and it's the easiest place to go or whatever it is. There's shopping today more and more. I mean, think about it. At least us. I mean, if you're out in the rural area or, things like that, there's more limitations. Or maybe there's even more opportunities because they have more choice there than they would have ever had before. Mm-hmm. But there's no reason you actually have to go to a store anymore.
Right.
You can get anything delivered to you, in many cases, in an hour. So if you think about department stores and where they are today, they were kind of a need base before, and I don't think they fulfill any needs.
Yeah, I think it's an old adage that I personally have used, like you don't have to go to stores anymore, you have to want to go to a store.
Right.
So why would I want to go there if I can just find it right here, sitting here in the shorts, watching a football game or whatever that might be. One last thing about young people, and then I'll ask you a couple of more fun questions, I hope. But AI. So, I look at a television commercial and we've got a rapper talking about AI and we've got, AI everywhere. And we're talking about how does AI affect retail and how does AI do this and how does AI make us better here? You just told me some scary things about 5G.
Right.
So what do you think about AI?
I think it's the same thing. I mean, AI's honestly been around forever. Well, for a long time. I mean, it's artificial intelligence. Yeah. So that's what
that's what a computer
runs
is.
on a computer,
yeah.
Right? So this isn't a new thing, but the capabilities are, are new and are advancing. And I think it's the same as I said about sensors and virtual reality and these things. I think that the connectivity that we'll have will enable so much more, so much faster. And the fact that we can have sensors attached to every aspect of our life and body and this and that, that's where the AI comes in as far as being able to, aggregate those and do something with it.
I love it, personally.
I'm mixed. It scares me when I swear to God, it's gotten to the point where I think something. And like I was thinking about a company that I had just gotten an email about, and then suddenly a commercial comes on for it. So now I'm like paranoid. Everything's listening to me and pulling in information.
How about some bold predictions for 2020? Like, what do you think is going to happen here? This seems to me like a really seminal year, and so many things going down with internationally, and gun control and climate change. Oh my God, we've got some really major issues that seem to me like on the precipice of a solution. Like, what was it Einstein said? That if I had an hour, I'd spend 50 minutes on the problem. And I think we've got to that 50 minutes. Like we know what the problems are.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it'll happen in 2020, but I think it's coming soon. Is kind of a reckoning between what's happening in society with anxiety and mental health. What we see with today's youth, the suicide rates are at all-time high. And what I'm seeing in my studies is they are more stressed out than ever.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons for that. It's coming at them from a million different directions.
Well, they're worried about finances, you said.
Well, they're worried about finances. They're worried about jobs. Again, in this study, we saw half of the participants were doing something in high school to advance them. So whether it's AP classes or whatever it is, to try and take something that, counts for college later. It's both speed, but then also considering cost and how do they, reduce the cost of college or, education afterward. So doing all of these things. But I don't see them getting a break, like really, the decompression or whatever it is. So, and another aspect, actually, and this really falls in your business, is that decompression aspect. So, we know from, all retail and everything else, the decompression zone when you walk in the store is like one of the most critical aspects, so that people can transition themselves into that shopping mentality. And, it's moving into some different zone mentally.
Yeah.
But if you think about in our lives, we're losing these decompression zones. We're losing them between work and home. And we're losing them between play, then with school, shopping. Everything's just a blur and more coming at people. And I think that there's going to have to be some changes because so many of the things that we have happening bad in society are a result of anxiety and stress and mental health and on and on and on. And I think we've got to figure out ways to address that, whether it's through how we're dealing with employment, with education, society at large, what it means in healthcare, food we eat, what is that, the impact of that and how we feel. So I think the technology coming that is increasing the connectivity is also going to result in more transparency of what actions and behaviors, the resulting impact on us as people.
I think you're really right about that. I read a study that IBM did, and this was, a decade ago, but what they started doing was giving certain executives 1 month off. They made them take one whole month. And what they found from it was the first week, they were still really tense about the job. The second week, they started to loosen up. But the third week that they were gone, they totally forgot about the job. There wasn't really a thought and everything like that. And then the fourth week, they got really energized about doing it again. So somewhat of a sabbatical almost mentality.
Yeah, and there was just a test done. This was in Japan and Tokyo, where they're notorious workaholics, right? Work at all hours, then you go out to the bar and on.
A lot of
holics.
A
lot, probably. But they did. It was a major company. I think it was a U.S. company. I'm trying to remember who it was. But they did a test of 4-day work weeks in Japan, in Tokyo, and they found that during this, by bringing their people back to 4-day work week versus the traditional 5, productivity went up by like 40%.
Yeah, did this just happen?
Yeah.
I heard this like yesterday.
Yeah, they just had the results out. It was 2 or 3 days ago. I saw.
Yeah.
Productivity went up that much. And maybe it's because people get a break, whatever it is, or maybe you fill the time that you have, and they're actually feeling more of an incentive to do the things because they knew they were going to be able to have the break when they went away.
Well, we have what we call summer Fridays here, summer hours here, every Friday all year round, where if you have your time in and it's noon on Friday and, there's no deadline or anything like that, you go home.
Yeah.
And a lot of people take advantage of it. It can't happen every week, but it happens a lot. And just that thought that, okay, today's Friday, I might be able to do something Friday afternoon, it really is a stress reliever. So maybe, every employer is going to have to start to think about those types of things. Sabbaticals, Fridays, 4-day work weeks.
Yeah. That actually reminds me of another just interesting thing we've seen with the younger people, the Gen Zs. And this is, looking at the differences and where things are continuing from millennials to Gen Z around this. We saw with millennials, they were the ones that really demanded work flexibility, working differently, not, your traditional and, everything else. And, the rest of us came to really appreciate it, but they were the ones that kind of demanded, they have it. And what we're seeing with Gen Z is really interesting because they want, they also want flexibility. They want these things, but they want to be granted permission or really encouraged to do it. So with millennials, be like, okay, you can do this, whatever it is. And all right, cool, do it. Gen Zs, this again gets back to their ambition and their drive and everything else, is that they don't really feel like it's okay to do it unless you tell them, this is part of being a good employee is doing this, because they're trying so hard to hit on all the different factors. So they want to be encouraged to take the flexibility or actually shut down on the Friday. Because if you just say, hey, you can go home at noon, they're going to think, okay, or I could use those 5 hours to do this extra stuff. So it's a different mentality coming.
Yikes. Okay. A little bit of fun, hopefully. So this is what we call the lightning round. It's sponsored by WD Partners. I'm going to ask you a word or two.
Okay.
And you're going to give me the first thing that comes to your mind. And the first one is, okay, boomer.
Ageism.
Yeah. I read an article yesterday where an op-ed piece, and the guy was saying, let's not make fun of boomers. Let's make fun of rich people. Those are the people that we should go after. Okay, next one is fave city. And you've been to a lot of them.
I have. It's hard to pick just one. My current favorite is Melbourne, Australia.
Because?
I don't know. I can't figure. I think it's like my soul city. It feels good. It's designed well. Like it's a place you can really tell they care and appreciate design and aesthetics and have invested in it.
Okay, next one. Columbus, Ohio.
Great city. I mean, I'm trying to think of other words to progressive, underrated.
Yeah, I think underrated is a good one. Like the people that started Fox in the Snow moved here from Brooklyn because they could never actually do Fox in the Snow in Brooklyn. And it's super successful here, and there's certainly an audience for that. Fave food?
I couldn't pick just one. Sushi. I like sushi a lot.
It's a damn good category. And finally, you are addicted to...
fixing things. I can't. When something's not working properly, or it's a bad customer experience, or whatever it is, I'm addicted or obsessed with figuring out why is it like that. How can you change it? There's just there's too many of those that I think are not recognized by the organizations. That those are the things holding them back from more success and better customer experience. So those things drive me nuts.
Well, that's a good one. It's a big challenge too.
I'll never
fixing things.
Never be perfect, that's for sure.
A lot of broken stuff.
Yeah, a lot of broken stuff.
Okay, well, thank you, Marcie. You've been very gracious. It was awesome having you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a fun discussion.
Yeah, I know. Could go on a lot. Okay, people, be sure and listen next time for some more human interaction on hot topics. And I don't mean only the demise of stores. There, I said it. Also, be sure and subscribe to this podcast. WDcast is at WDpartners.com. Go to the menu hamburger and hit what we think. Then go to the very bottom of that page, bottom center, and hit the podcast icon and pick one. And we've got a bunch in there now, including Google, Lionesque, Alexa, and now EY. So stay frosty, everyone. Thank you, and thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.